In a music landscape oversaturated with copycats and formulaic sounds, one artist made the bold decision not to blend in. And that artist was Future. While countless rappers scrambled to imitate trending styles, mimicking flows that echoed the success of others, often borrowing heavily from pioneers like Migos or Future himself, the man at the center of it all was crafting something original, something transformative. Future didn't just ride the wave of trap music, he helped define it. He wasn't reacting to the culture, he was shaping it from the ground up. For over 2 decades, he has nurtured his artistry with the discipline of a scientist and the vision of a poet. His journey was never about fame alone. It was about constructing an entirely new way of expressing pain, ambition, and triumph. Future honed his voice to a razor's edge, manipulating melody and cadence until they became as much a part of his storytelling as his lyrics. In doing so, he created music that transcended genre. It became a coded language of its own, one that speaks to broken hearts, late-night hustlers, and those chasing ghosts in the city lights. Future's work isn't just music, it's an atmosphere, a mood, a blueprint for modern sound. What truly separates Future from the crowd isn't just the sound of his music, it's the philosophy behind its creation. For him, a song isn't just a beat paired with words. It's a living environment, built layer by layer with precision. He doesn't merely record verses. He constructs sonic architecture. Every bass line, every auto-tune note, every rhythmic loop is part of a grander design meant to evoke specific feelings, often conflicting ones: numbness and euphoria, grief and empowerment. His chart toppers may sometimes appear straightforward or even simplistic at first glance, but they are anything but. Behind every club anthem lies a deeper structure of coded pain and measured delivery. Future's musical evolution from a local hustler recording in dim studios to an international force dominating arenas wasn't some accidental success. It was the result of deliberate choices, a masterclass in long-term influence. He reverse-engineered the formula for cultural impact, embedding his own mythology into every track. This is why Future's presence looms large in the genre. He didn't just participate in hip-hop's evolution, he rewrote parts of its DNA. Getting to know Future, the real man behind the music, is like trying to hold water in your hands. He is there, visible, present in every song and public appearance, yet somehow always just out of reach. In interviews, he plays with perception. One moment he's opening up about his experiences, the next he retreats behind cryptic phrases and contradictions. He'll admit to being shaped by his lyrics, then moments later distance himself from them, suggesting they're merely artistic projections. To many, this makes him seem evasive. But those who have observed him closely, even seasoned insiders like Elliott Wilson, understand that this isn't dishonesty. It's protection. Future doesn't dodge questions because he has something to hide. He does it to preserve what little is left of Nayvadius Wilburn, the man behind the name. In a world where every moment can be turned into a meme or headline, Future's mystery becomes his armor. His elusiveness isn't a flaw, it's a defense mechanism. It's how he survives the pressure of fame while keeping some part of himself untouched by the noise. Future once remarked, "You live 2 lives. I was born as Nayvadius, but now I'm Future." It wasn't just a catchy quote, it was a map to his soul. That single line carries the weight of an entire lifetime of reinvention. Born Nayvadius Wilburn, he came into a world filled with instability and struggle, a world that shaped him through chaos, limitation, and survival. But through music, he found an escape hatch, a way to rewrite the story. Becoming Future wasn't a rebrand, it was a resurrection. This new identity didn't just give him fame, it gave him control. It allowed him to be more than a product of his environment. The persona of Future is grander, bolder, darker, and yet within it hides the sensitivity of the boy he once was. Music gave him the tools not just to cope, but to transform. In the booth, he's not just rapping, he's building a parallel universe where the pain of Nayvadius is processed through the power few artists master, turning raw wounds into timeless art. None of this would have been possible without Rico Wade, not just a cousin, but a compass. A foundational member of organized noise, Rico wasn't merely involved in Atlanta's musical renaissance, he helped architect it. For a young Nayvadius, this connection wasn't just lucky, it was life-changing. But the dynamic between them wasn't about handouts or shortcuts. While some critics have been quick to label Future's rise as the product of nepotism, that assessment misses the nuance. Rico didn't pave the road for him. He handed him a shovel. He offered access, guidance, and history. But the grind, the vision, the voice, those were all Future's. Rico exposed him to the possibilities, showing him that Atlanta's sound wasn't just noise, it was power. And in that power, Future found purpose. The studio didn't just become a place to make music. It became his sanctuary, a temple where lessons of rhythm, lyricism, and survival passed down like family heirlooms. Future wasn't born into fame. He was forged in hardship. His early life in Atlanta was anything but easy. Raised in the gritty shadows of the city's south side, his reality was shaped by cracked sidewalks, sirens at night, and the lingering fog of the crack epidemic. His father was a ghost in his life, a gap that never quite closed. His mother, a 911 dispatcher, bore the weight of two lives, protector and provider. But even her long hours couldn't keep the world at bay. The streets weren't just a backdrop, they were the education system. And Future, like many others, learned fast. The environment didn't ask questions, it issued ultimatums. There was no roadmap to safety, no blueprint for success, just a constant push to stay afloat. By his teenage years, the pull of survival became stronger than any childhood dream. Hustling wasn't a rebellion, it was a necessity. And yet, through that chaos, seeds of something more began to grow. Even in the darkest corners of his youth, there was rhythm. There was a story waiting to be told. At 17, everything began to shift. Future's connection with Rico Wade matured beyond family ties. It became a mentorship that would redefine his direction. Rico welcomed him into the Dungeon, a basement studio that had become legendary in Atlanta's creative history. But this wasn't a warm embrace. The Dungeon wasn't a playground. It was a crucible. It had produced giants, and new voices had to earn their space. Future's first steps in the Dungeon were uncertain. He was the kid cousin, tolerated but underestimated. Many in the room saw him as just another hanger-on, someone riding coattails. And for a time, that judgment stung. But when tragedy struck again, the death of another uncle, something hardened within him. The streets had taken enough from him. He knew if he stayed, he'd either end up dead or forgotten. So he made a decision, to give himself completely to music. No more splitting time between danger and ambition. He began showing up to the studio every day, not to hang out, but to work. He watched, listened, absorbed. He took rejection on the chin and came back stronger. The Dungeon wasn't just where he learned about music, it's where he chose who he wanted to become. It happened almost offhandedly. Amid a haze of beats, jokes, and late-night studio sessions, an older artist looked at the young Nayvadius and said, "You're the future." It was a playful nod to his youth, a comment made in passing, but something about it clicked. The name stuck. And more importantly, the idea stuck. From that moment on, he wasn't just Nayvadius Wilburn, he was Future, and he carried the weight of that name like a mission. He began shaping a persona, not in costume or gimmick, but in commitment. Every song, every hook, every verse was crafted with an intensity that bordered on obsession. He wasn't just trying to make it, he was trying to become legendary. The early days were rough. He failed often. His sound didn't fit the mold. He wasn't always taken seriously. But he kept grinding. He studied flows, manipulated auto-tune like an instrument, and found ways to channel raw emotion into his music. With each track, the lines between the person and the persona blurred further. Future wasn't just a name now. It was a declaration, a brand, a movement. And behind it stood a man who had turned struggle into symphony. Many dismissed trap rappers as accidental stars, lucky products of social media hype. But Future defies that stereotype. Behind his slurred vocals and auto-tuned crooning lies a surgeon's precision. He experiments with tone, pacing, and emotion like a scientist. His music isn't chaotic, it's structured chaos. Even artists like Young Thug, who once dropped marketing knowledge in a Reddit thread, understand the game. And Future? He practically wrote the rule book. It's easy to see Future's world as one of luxury, filled with jewels, clubs, and hit records. But at the core of his music is pain. Pain from abandonment, pain from the streets, pain from watching loved ones fall to addiction or prison. That pain bleeds into his lyrics, masked by swagger, but always present. Yet it's also his superpower. Instead of letting suffering break him, Future turned it into an empire. Through music, he found not only escape, but immortality.